Aging and stress on 513. Good thing it don't affect you young people like it does us old people.
Whatever.
Ron, aging and stress does nothing to you, does it? You just keep on ticking.
Oh, yeah. Gets easier.
I think there's a lot, yeah, everything gets easier. I think there's a lot of just common sense involved in the aging and stress process. And it's a known fact that with age, you have increased chances of illnesses and cancer. And one theory, according to one theory, this is because aging lymphocytes gradually accumulate genetic errors, which degenerate their effectiveness. And that's one theory. Another theory is we just don't produce as many white blood cells anymore, and I think that may be as true as any of them. We already know that the thymus gland turns to a fatty structure and produces less and less thymosin as we get older. Numerous experiments have demonstrated that tumors grow faster in experimental animals subjected to stress. So the stress factor of this goes back to what we learned in the hormonal chapter, that when we're stressed, our anti-stress, anti-inflammatory hormone is cortisol. We said we could do this on short term, but long term it lowers your immune response. So stress over a long period of time reduces immunity, which allows illnesses, cancers, whatever else to attack the body, and your immune system is depleted. So that's the stress effect. The age effect is this: we just accumulate more errors, and the cells that's supposed to do their job just don't do it as well anymore. I think we can say that about us as a whole. The older we get, the harder it is to get the same job done. We don't have the extra energy, and maybe I'm just speaking for myself personally. I know it's a lot harder chasing two little ones around now than it was when I was 25 chasing two little ones around. But little ones are made for young people. Of course, I take them to school now, and they ask the little ones, they'll say, "Oh, did your grandpa bring you to school today?"
Aww.
It's really sad. If they say that about the wife when she drops them off, they say, "Did your grandma bring them to school?" Somebody's gonna get hurt.
Well, I was thinking it would they ask Grandpa, but.
It was sad that you laughed about that. Let's go on to 514. And we're into a category here of autoimmunity and immune complex diseases, which really, to almost are one and the same. Autoimmunity is where your immune system fights against self. And we talked about antibodies and self the other day a little bit. And when the immune system attacks self and starts destroying self, then things start falling apart. And a lot of these diseases are really, really debilitating and bad, and some of them will kill you over a fairly short period of time, and the other ones just drag out misery for the rest of your life. The only difference really here in these and the immune complex diseases is there's massive swelling and inflammation in immune complex disease, and they call it complex because there's more complexities to the problems, and a lot of the same names listed in both of them. What you'll need to know here is be familiar with all the different diseases that fit in these categories. Just have a familiarity. They list things you probably don't think about every day. Type 1 diabetes, they believe, is one of these. Rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, which we've known that one for a long time. Graves' disease, glomerular nephritis, thyroiditis, pernicious anemia, psoriasis. You know, that's just a skin disorder. It's probably not going to kill you, but it'll absolutely drive you bonkers for the rest of your life. And then systemic lupus, that's the one that'll make life miserable, drag it out just long enough to make it even worse, and then kill you. This one really attacks different aspects of the body to the extent you'll have more throat infections, or you'll have ear infections as an adult you normally wouldn't have. It just kind of muffles the immune system, and sometimes the immune system comes out of it and works pretty good, and then you have kind of a relapse and the immune system's not doing so well at all. But systemic lupus is certainly not one anybody would want. And they list these in categories. The category 1's Hashimoto's thyroiditis is an example in category 1. Category 2, they have as the drugs. This occurs when drugs such as aspirin, sulfonamide, antihistamines, digoxin, and other combine with platelet protein to produce new antigens. So thrombocytopenia was your example there. Number 3 is rheumatoid arthritis. Number 4, rheumatic fever. That's from strep infection. You build antibodies against strep, but yet it goes and attacks either nephrons or the valves in your heart. So that's never good. Number 5, Graves' disease or type 1 diabetes. And number 6, do they even have anything listed there? Inadequate expression of this gene may lead to insufficient activity of regulatory T lymphocytes and result in autoimmune diseases as a general. So it's a suppressor aspect in number 6. Disease may result when there is inadequate activity of regulatory. So we have what's called suppressor T cells, and that's what number 6 is in reference to. If our suppressor T cells are not doing their job, then it's not suppressing your immune system from killing self, then it kills more self. When we do tissue transplants or organ transplants, a lot of times they'll do all they can to encourage suppressor T cells, so they can suppress your big time immune system from killing off what we just transplanted. And of course they use a lot of steroids, which lowers the immune system as a whole. We encourage suppressor cells, which hopefully is doing their job, and we don't attack this. If we stall it long enough, then when we gradually build the immune system back up, it eventually says, yeah, it's been here long enough, it's probably no big deal. That's the idea. The real truth of it is, if somebody has an organ transplant, they literally stays on some type of suppressor drug the rest of their life. Because if it ever kills that organ, then we're right back to where we started from. So we really don't take the chance. If it ever starts attacking it, you can't turn it back. So you try to prevent it from ever attacking to start with. So who wants to take a chance of not taking those drugs and losing that again? Probably not. Immune complex diseases, and they're just more complex. They actually, after listing some of these in here, the rheumatoid arthritis and lupus is listed here. They list hepatitis B, an immune complex that consists of viral antigens and antibodies which cause widespread inflammation. It's way more complex than just a simple area. It may not be as bad, when I say bad, if we have antibodies attacking a valve in your heart, that's bad. But it's a specific area. It's not the whole body's inflamed for whatever reason, and that's the difference in the terminology. In this, it can be widespread across the body. Can we treat this? Yes, we can. We can at least treat the symptoms. There's tons of drugs out there that can treat these symptoms. They may kill you another way, but there's tons of drugs out there, unfortunately, that they can help, but at the same time hinder. But they list that when arterial damage is caused not by the hepatitis virus, but by the major inflammatory response, which is important to get that under control because that in itself creates a lot of damage. So they listed rheumatoid arthritis and systemic lupus. Now the last thing in the chapter they talked about is allergies. On 516, you have two allergy processes here. You have an immediate hypersensitivity and a delayed hypersensitivity. Immediate hypersensitivity is a case in which you walk into a hay barn and you immediately get hay fever from dust, and you start sneezing, your eyes starts watering, just mucus starts running, and all of a sudden you get stopped up, you feel miserable. You ever had that, Jed?
Sure.
And in the fall of the year, you don't have to step in the hay barn. There's ragweed, and there's just the last couple months before these frosts hit, it's just been brutal. And on dry years, it's even worse because at least when you get a rain every now and then, it'll take it out of the air until it gets back in the air. You get a few days, but then when we get a lot of rain, it's the mold that kills people. So it's danged if you do and danged if you don't, either way you look at it. But that's immediate hypersensitivity, and that's all allergies are, is a hypersensitivity of your immune system to an allergen that typically by itself would not cause a problem, but when it enters the body, it usually joins up with a body cell, probably a protein of some kind, and now the body doesn't really recognize the foreign hapten or the foreign allergen. It doesn't recognize your protein now because it's got something attached to it. It just looks odd, so we need to kill that. I just don't like the looks of it. So that's kind of the attitude of the system. Now, delayed hypersensitivity, this is what gets a lot of girls in trouble because they'll tell their parents they was out on a date, they went to the movie with their boyfriend, and 3 days later, that poison ivy all over them. Well, we know it is rolling around in the bushes somewhere. Parents know these things.
I'll make
So,
sure I don't know it.
delayed hypersensitivity here catches you up in a lie if you don't watch it, because it shows up a few days later. It's, what's the shot in medical field, or you gotta go get tested for, what's the different ones? TB, it's
Yeah.
delayed, just like poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, it's all delayed. You go back, 3 to 5 days later and look and see if it's puffed up. Day or two.
Yeah.
So
Like
that's
48
all,
hours?
that's all part of the delayed hypersensitivity. Food allergies, milk, eggs, peanuts, soy, wheat, typically that's not very delayed, that hits you pretty quick. I love eggs, I eat a lot of eggs, and growing up, my grandmother, I'd go to this time of the year, it's the perfect time of the year, I'd go to my grandpa's, he loved to hunt, so I'd go hunting with him. He is one of those that get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, walk to wherever we was going, would have to walk an hour over 2 ridges, off into a bottom that was 10 degrees colder than it was at the house. And we'd get there and still be an hour of darkness left. I mean, he was a very dedicated hunter. So grandma would get up at 2 and cook breakfast for us. Now that's how dedicated grandma was, and her eggs were over easy. That's the way grandpa liked them. I didn't mind it, that was fine. You could mix it in with the gravy and the biscuits and the rest of the grease that was in there, cause it was all good and it'd last you all day when you eat that. Sounded good, didn't it? But for some reason, after all those years of eating over easy eggs, I've become allergic to them. And I didn't realize this. This is several years later. Every time I'd eat an egg that wasn't completely cooked through, I could eat a scrambled egg or a hard fried egg, was fine. But if that yolk had any run to it at all, it would upset my stomach almost within an hour. And it took me a long time to figure out that's what was doing it. But I finally connected the dots there, and every time I eat an over easy egg, it eats me. So now I just eat tons of scrambled eggs, and I hard fry them or boil them, or I can eat them anyway like that. It's just something about those proteins in the egg not being cooked down completely for some reason.
I'm like that way with some fruits and vegetables. If I don't cook them, then I'm allergic to them and I can't eat them.
I don't have that problem with most other foods. I just can eat them any way I can get my hands on them, and that's typically a problem in itself as well. But, no specific therapy to any of these. Now, I had an old book that said food allergies you could actually take aspirin for, but I don't see that in any new books. Now, the concept would have been if these were causing a hypersensitivity, then the aspirin would be an anti-inflammatory, and you could see some help there, but I don't think it's going to be a full-fledged trigger of help. So they've taken it out of this book. Immediate hypersensitivities to particular antigens is commonly tested by injecting various antigens under the skin. This is the flare and wheel testing process that you see at the bottom of the picture. Has anybody ever gone through this? It's not very pleasant to have to go through it.
Do mine on my back.
Yep, a lot of them do them on the back. I've seen them do them down this arm, and extend to the shoulders and back. At one time, the FDA allowed them to combine 2 or 3 of the less problematic antigens into one shot. And so if they give you that shot and you responded to it, then they just put the combination into the antidote, the vaccine, if you will, that they start injecting you later. But now, the FDA tells them everything has to be separated. We need to know exactly which ones. So it went from 80 of these normal pricks to about 120 minimal. And then you get specific into food allergies and animal allergies. And they'll ask you, your surroundings, and then they'll pick some of those specifics. If you're around cats and dogs and animals, they'll pick some of those. If there are certain foods that you think in your mind might be a problem, peanut butter, peanuts, nuts, then they'll throw that one in there as well. But you go from 80 to 120, you're getting stabbed a lot of times. And there are some places that have kind of a gel, and they stick this gel, they hold it on your back. Is that the way they did yours? They did actual pricks.
Yeah.
Now, I think the ones that get the best reading are literally needle pricks under the skin, and they inject small amounts of this. And you can see these little swellings in this arm. And they just slid the needle right under the skin and injected it. And that's how you're gonna get your best results there. But it's a pain to deal with. You just sit there and get shot after shot after shot underneath the skin. Not overly painful, but after a while it gets old. I mean, you're gonna be there 2 or 3 hours.
Might as well get a tattoo.
I said, whoa, you're allergic to that one, and it swelled up this big, and they're throwing cortisone, you know, trying to get, when you're done, you just walk out of there ready to just, you just like to claw yourself to death when you're done, so. The delayed hypersensitivity is usually a contact kind of delay, poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac, tuberculosis, TB test that we mentioned. There's even a MAD2 test that they say is similar to the TB test. But that finishes up chapter 15. That prepares us for chapter 20. That's what we have left. When we come back from Thanksgiving break on that Monday, we will start chapter 20. Bundy's lab will be genetics, and that's our last lab. Some of y'all have makeup tests that we're just gonna try to get mixed in that week we come back gradually, right?
Yes.
Knock those out so we don't have, so y'all are in a Tuesday lab. So if we can knock them out before that last Tuesday, then we won't even come. I may cancel that whole day for myself. I've got things I wanna do, so. Any questions? All right.